Today, we delve into a dark and pivotal chapter of the Second Sino-Japanese War, an event that would forever scar the history of the 20th century, the Battle of Nanjing. This battle, fought from December 1937 to January 1938, was not just a military engagement. It was the prelude to one of the most horrific atrocities in modern history, the Nanjing Massacre. It tested the very limits of human endurance and exposed the brutal reality of total war, fundamentally changing the international view of the conflict raging in Asia. To truly grasp the significance of what happened in Nanjing, we need to rewind a few months to July 7, 1937. The Marco Polo Bridge incident, a minor skirmish that was deliberately escalated, marked the beginning of Japan's full-scale invasion of China. The Japanese Imperial Army, with its modern military machine, advanced rapidly. After a grueling and bloody 3-month struggle for Shanghai, which ended in November 1937, the Japanese set their sights on a new, more symbolic target, Nanjing, the capital of the Republic of China. The Japanese High Command was convinced that capturing the capital would shatter Chinese morale and force the government, led by Chiang Kai-shek, to surrender. They believed this single blow would end the war. The force tasked with this mission was the Central China Front Army, commanded by General Iwane Matsui. This was a formidable army of about 200,000 elite soldiers. Among them were units like the 6th and 16th Divisions, which had already gained a fearsome reputation for their ruthlessness on the battlefield. They were well-equipped, highly trained, and motivated by a string of victories. On the other side stood the defenders of Nanjing. The Chinese force, commanded by General Tang Shengji, was a stark contrast. It consisted of roughly 150,000 soldiers, but this number is misleading. Most of these troops were exhausted, demoralized, and poorly supplied, having just retreated from the meat grinder that was the Battle of Shanghai. Many were fresh conscripts with minimal training, thrust into the front lines with little more than courage to sustain them. Their weaponry was a hodgepodge of outdated rifles and a limited number of machine guns, no match for the Japanese arsenal of heavy artillery, tanks, and overwhelming air power. Despite the odds, the Chinese government initially resolved to make a stand. Defending Nanjing was a matter of national honor, a symbol of their will to resist. General Tang Shengji vowed to live or die with the city. Frantic, last-minute preparations began. Defensive lines were drawn up, trenches were dug, and fortifications were hastily constructed around the city's ancient walls and along the Yangtze River. However, these preparations were rushed and ultimately inadequate. The outer defense line was stretched thin over dozens of kilometers, making it impossible to defend effectively with the limited number of troops and heavy weapons available. The city was a trap waiting to be sprung. The Japanese offensive began on December 1, 1937. It was swift and brutal. Japanese forces launched relentless attacks on Nanjing's outer defenses, focusing on key positions like the Guanghui Gate, Zhongshan Gate, and the crucial Yijiang Gate, which controlled access to the river. The Chinese defenders fought with incredible bravery. At Guanghui Gate, for instance, a small garrison of Chinese soldiers held out for days against repeated, overwhelming Japanese assaults, inflicting heavy casualties on the attackers. They fought for every inch of ground, knowing they were the last line of defense for their capital. But valor alone couldn't overcome the massive disparity in military strength. The Japanese systematically dismantled the Chinese defenses with a relentless barrage of artillery fire, aerial bombing, and armored assaults. One by one, the defensive positions crumbled. The outer lines were breached, and Japanese troops began to encircle the city. The situation inside Nanjing grew desperate. By December 12th, with the final major defensive positions overrun and the city effectively surrounded, General Tang Shengji realized the battle was lost. To save what was left of his army, he issued an order for a general retreat across the Yangtze River. What followed was not an orderly withdrawal, but a complete breakdown of command and control. The retreat was chaotic and catastrophic. The order came too suddenly, and there were nowhere near enough boats to ferry the tens of thousands of soldiers across the wide river. Panic set in. Soldiers and fleeing civilians swarmed the river bank, creating a tragic bottleneck at the Yijang Gate. Many soldiers, stripped of their weapons and uniforms, tried to blend in with the civilian population. Thousands were trapped on the south bank of the Yangtze, their escape route cut off, awaiting the arrival of the enemy. On December 13, 1937, the Japanese Imperial Army marched into Nanjing. The tricolor flag of the Republic of China was torn down, and the rising sun flag was hoisted over the defeated capital. For the soldiers and civilians left behind, the battle may have been over, but their ordeal was just beginning. The fall of the city marked the start of the Nanjing Massacre. For the next 6 weeks, the city was plunged into a living hell. Under the command of officers, Japanese soldiers engaged in a campaign of systematic brutality that defies easy description. Mass executions of disarmed Chinese soldiers and male civilians became commonplace. They were rounded up, marched to the outskirts of the city, and slaughtered by firing squad, bayoneting, or even used for live bayonet practice. The Yangtze River ran red with blood. The atrocities were not limited to killings. Widespread rape, looting, and arson engulfed the city. Tens of thousands of women and girls, regardless of age, were subjected to horrific sexual violence. Homes and businesses were plundered, and large parts of the city were burned to the ground. Conservative estimates put the death toll between 200,000 and 300,000 people. It was a calculated campaign of terror designed to break the spirit of the Chinese people. The Battle of Nanjing and the subsequent massacre sent shockwaves far beyond the city's walls. Militarily, it was a devastating defeat for China. The loss of the capital and the destruction of a significant portion of its army was a heavy blow. Politically, it forced the nationalist government to relocate its capital inland to the mountain city of Chongqing, signaling that the war would now be a prolonged struggle of attrition, a long-term resistance. Internationally, the news of the rape of Nanjing, reported by a handful of brave Western journalists and missionaries who remained in the city, sparked outrage and widespread condemnation. However, this moral outrage did not translate into concrete action. The Western powers, preoccupied with the rising threat of Nazi Germany in Europe and mired in their own economic problems, offered little more than words of protest. Yet, far from crushing China's will to fight, the brutality of Nanjing had the opposite effect. It galvanized the Chinese people. The stories of the massacre fueled a new, nationwide determination to resist the Japanese invasion at any cost. It united different political factions and ordinary citizens in a common cause, strengthening the resolve that would sustain China through 8 long, brutal years of war. Historically, the Battle of Nanjing and the massacre have become a profound symbol of the suffering of the Chinese people during World War II. They are a stark and painful reminder of the unimaginable horrors that war can unleash and underscore the vital importance of safeguarding peace. Today, in Nanjing, sites like the Memorial Hall of the Victims in Nanjing Massacre by Japanese invaders stand as solemn monuments. They not only commemorate the countless lives that were lost, but also serve to educate future generations about this tragedy, in the hope that by remembering the past, we can prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. In conclusion, the Battle of Nanjing was more than just a military campaign. It was a turning point in the Second Sino-Japanese War and a defining, tragic moment in the history of the 20th century. It exposed the depths of human cruelty, but also highlighted the unyielding resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable adversity. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a like. And subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into history. See you next time.